99.3 KNSI. Time for Taking You Home with VoigtJohnson Real Estate. You hear it every Thursday morning at 7:23, Saturdays at 7:50 in the morning here on KNSI. Start your home search at VoigtJohnson.com. Brandon Johnson, good morning, sir.
It's good to be here.
Well, I tell you, it is the month of July.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh man, I would hope that we're going to get a chance to slow it down just a little bit now that the 4th is come and gone.
Yeah, and if we can get a little rain, that would be good.
True enough. Hey, one of the things that didn't used to happen was contingencies, right? When interest rates are super low, you don't have to worry about those kind of things, or people were waiving them. Now, interest rates are up a little bit, and people are coming back to contingencies, and, I'll buy your house if we can do that. I'll sell you the house, but you're going to have to do that. Exactly. When we talk about contingencies, what are we talking about?
A contingency is just a condition that has to be met for the transaction to proceed. So,
Okay.
For instance, I can make an offer on a home contingent on me selling my previous home.
Oh, I got it.
I can, if anything, generally, if I'm getting a loan, generally the transaction is contingent on my financing. Home inspections are another major contingency where the buyer has, within a given set of parameters that's negotiated, the option to cancel based on that home inspection. Right. So we are starting to see, we're doing more home sales contingent on the sale of another home. We're seeing that more and more now, which is good. But a contingency is basically just a condition that has to be met for the transaction to proceed.
No, I had always heard that contingencies only were for, let me see, I have to get this right. They were if a buyer, well, okay. If I have to sell my house, I can purchase the new house with a contingency that my house is going to sell. Correct?
Yep.
So I can kind of name that tune a little bit, can't I, as the new buyer coming in?
Yeah, but there's risks involved whenever there's contingencies too.
Yeah, and here's why I'm asking that, because I may not have a place yet, but I want to sell my house.
So a seller can do, and this is becoming more and more popular too, you as a seller can make the transaction contingent on you finding a new place within, let's say, 45 days or whatever.
Okay.
So if you never get a lease to an apartment or never find a new home to procure, you can cancel that transaction too. It's not as typical, but we are utilizing that more just for the situation you described.
So last week we told this story. I have another one here. Can I share this
Sure.
with folks? Okay, here we go. Quote, we made an offer contingent on a home inspection. The inspector had concerns about mold in the attic, but was not able to confirm. We did not have time to get it properly tested in the time frame of our contingency, so we were forced to move forward without the mold test. Thankfully, it was not a major issue, but we felt like there wasn't enough time to properly inspect the home. How could that have been avoided?
Well, not knowing the specifics.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Basically, a home inspection contingency, when you negotiate that, you have, the way it's worded is you have X amount of days where you as the buyer have the right to cancel.
Sure.
That's basically your right to do.
Right.
Now, can you renegotiate things? Absolutely. So let's just say it's either a 5 or 7 day contingency. Typically, the general home inspector will come in. It sounds like he found some suspicious items in the attic.
Yeah.
He's not an expert in mold, so I'm sure just recommended to get a mold expert in.
Right.
Now, what's happening is they're probably running in with a day or two left on that contingency.
Right.
You have a couple options. And let me just back up. A seller's not obligated to do anything technically.
Okay.
The way it's worded is the only right a buyer has is to cancel if they're not satisfied with the home. Now, can you renegotiate? Absolutely.
Right.
But what's happened is there's probably a day or two left where they couldn't get the mold specialist in to test it within that time frame, right? You have a couple options. You can always ask to extend that period. That would be my first ask of the listing agent is, hey, we have a legitimate concern. We still want to proceed with the house, but we want to extend this another 5 days to get the professional in there. Or we can ask for the seller just to take care of whatever someone finds subsequently. A seller may be reluctant to do that, not knowing exactly what
they're getting into.
Right. Yeah. But just on the surface of it, assuming that the buyer's agent made the request to extend the inspection contingency, the seller's not obligated to.
Yeah.
And so assuming the seller said, nope, because I don't know the situation, there could be other buyers waiting in the wings. It could have sold day one where it's not in their best interest to continue this. Now the buyer has a decision. Do I want to cancel or do I want to proceed? And it sounds
Right.
like that's kind of the realm this particular
Okay,
buyer.
now from a seller's perspective, if I'm that seller, I'm automatically thinking, oh, I wasn't aware of that possible mold deal either. I'm going to call my own mold people, get this whole thing taken care of. So in the event that I have just canceled this last sale or the buyer backed out, I'm not going to have that hurdle again to worry about. Is that does that
Absolutely.
happen?
Yeah, and so if I was representing the seller, what I would advise them is, look, when a buyer has concerns about a home inspection, if it is a legitimate issue that you are likely going to have to address for a subsequent buyer,
Right.
you're probably going to want to have to address it now, because it's going to keep coming up, right? But then you go in and you say, okay, what are the terms, the price of this offer, and all of that. But the threshold for me is this going to be a repetitive issue for the subsequent
Yeah.
buyer? You might as well, we're going to have to address it now and then do our own due diligence to find out what it is.
And now I understand why sometimes houses get pulled off the market, because we have to take care of this problem, and then when it comes back on, free and clear. So, and the only reason I brought that up is sometimes, when you see, oh, a house is taken off the market, oh, I wonder what's wrong. Well, that could be one of the instances.
It could be, but I would not make the assumption that just simply because a home inspection contingency comes back on
Yeah.
as an active, that there was an issue. You'd be surprised how many times, unfortunately, that the home inspection contingency is utilized as a catch-all contingency for other things. Now, that's not saying that's right, but I would not make the assumption,
Right.
just because a home comes back on the market, that there's necessarily something wrong with it.
Gotcha. Could have been financing fell through or whatever.
It could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of cases where a buyer doesn't even have to give a reason why they're canceling.
Right.
They basically have that period to decide if they're moving forward or not, and don't make that assumption that there may be issues.
Yep. But you don't know for sure.
But don't assume that just
All right.
because it's back on the market that there's something.
So for the answers to our questions, I would look up Brandon Voigt at VoigtJohnson Real Estate. Now, the show is called Taking You Home with VoigtJohnson Real Estate. We do it every Thursday morning at 7:23. Saturdays also here at 7:50 on KNSI. And again, start your home search at VoigtJohnson.com. Brandon, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
AM 1450, FM 99.3, KNSI.